Welcome everybody, this is Brother Mutant here. Today we're going to talk about my newest LP and the character that we're generating for it. This is Elle Dri'tch, and this is the build we're making for. And I want to go over several steps of the build, as it is a little atypical for an Eldritch Scion build. So this is going to be a pure Eldritch Scion, so literally no dipping into other classes. She will go all the way to level 20 if we actually are that lucky. We went for race of Aasimar, Angelkin to be specific, and there's a reason for this. A better pick may have been Muse Touch, because there's a better stat split. Muse Touch, for those of you that don't know, give you a +2 to Dex as well as a +2 to Charisma, two of our main stats for this build. Angelkin gives us a +2 to Strength and a +2 to Charisma. And while the extra Strength is nice, and I don't particularly care about it, it's actually helpful for carrying stuff around. And if we are going to run solo, okay, a little bit extra damage at the beginning has never hurt anybody, but it's not going to be anything to write home about. The reason we went with Angelkin specifically is this stuff down here. So we get lesser restoration once a day. This will allow us to literally ignore fatigue, at least the very first time it hits us. As soon as she becomes fatigued, I can use lesser restoration, cure it, and therefore I don't have to worry about taking a knee immediately. And this may help, especially if we're going to do solo runs for this character. We get a halo, of course, but that's all Aasimar. And that gets a blind/daze protection, so we leave that on all the time. Kind of cool looking as well. Because we're an Aasimar, we also get damage resistance 5 against acid, cold, and electrical attacks. And again, while this isn't going to save you every day of the week, less damage is less damage. So some of the attacks that we do are AoE moves. If I happen to dip a toe into it and accidentally do some damage to myself, this may actually prevent me from actually killing myself outright. So that'll be nice. As far as the other possible choices you could have gone with Muse Touch, like I mentioned before, we get a better stat split, and instead of lesser restoration, we do get Glitter Dust, which is a spell I was going to get anyway. We only get it once a day, but I could see that losing that, and therefore we get another spell pick at that level. I think that's level 2. That could be okay, not great, but it's there. Human, of course, there's nothing wrong with that. We get an extra feat for that, and this is a pretty feat-starved build to begin with. It is a little weird, so that extra feat could come in handy or bring some combat abilities online a little sooner, which would be nice. Gnome, of course, is an obvious choice. For those of you that haven't seen, Mithrils has a really nice build for their current solo run that they're doing on, I want to say, hard or unfair difficulty. It's one of the two. It's a very difficult run, and they're running solo for a gnome, but it's a gnome sorceress build and specializing in illusion, hence the going illusion route. Since we don't get a whole lot in illusion spells, I opted against this, but there is some good stuff that comes from being a gnome anyway. Like your short stature, that means you actually have some better armor class, you actually are more likely to hit your target because most targets are larger size and therefore you get a bonus to hit them. Just like if you were going halfling as well, whereas halfling get luck instead of bonus to illusion spells. So either of those would be decent categories. Halfling actually fits a little better, just like the Muse Touch, because it's a Dex and Charisma based caster. If you went Gnome, it would be a Con and Charisma based caster. So Con is the +2 you get, and a +2 for Charisma, of course, as well. So maybe a little more survivable, but again, both of them have a -2 penalty to Strength, which kind of sucks as well. We could have gone Elf. You get a little free spell penetration built into being an Elf character for your magic effects. So since we're not taking spell penetration really anyway, this could actually be particularly useful. We get access to elven weapons, of course, that's another thing, and elves get a +2 to Dex and Intelligence, which one is useful, the other's there, and I'm not going to turn it down. The -2 to Con, though, was a real issue for elves. You have to bring that back up to at least a 10, so I wouldn't feel bad. Remember, you are going to be in melee range, so it probably wouldn't behoove you to go elf, really. Tieflings are new to the game, and Tieflings just barely looked at, but the ones that stood out to me were Beast Brood, Grim Spawn, Pitborn, Spite Spawn. The right stats as far as +2 Charisma. We had some that have +2 to Dex. Some have some damage reduction from physical attacks and other abilities that they're creeping in as I look at them, but by and large, it really doesn't stick out to me as something that I'd want to play for this particular build. And then I'm not a real big fan of the horns either. So if I were to do a Tiefling, I'd probably do Eldritch Scoundrel, or literally go for a sorcerer that has those abyssal or the demonic heritage, what I forget what it's called. But those in some of the tiefling sub-races of tiefling get kind of a penalty to charisma normally if you don't go into the sorcerer bloodline that I just mentioned, the demonic or the devil type. In many cases, wipe away the charisma penalty, which is something, I suppose. But again, we're going Angelkin for that specific reason of lesser restoration. Now, the stats start out as 10 for strength with a +2 from being Angelkin. So a 12 at the start. Dex 16, Con 12, and 13, so an odd number for intelligence, which the first point will go into that to bring it up to 14 and stop there. 10 for wisdom. Charisma starts off at 16 with the +2 from Angelkin, bringing it to 18 finally. And then we'll put the last 4 points as we level up to 20 into charisma to bring it to a final 22. From there, gear, which would of course capitalize on our physical and mental stats, you can add 8 to every one of these things if we get those 2 pieces of gear that I'm hoping to find. So a 20 for strength, 24 for dex, which is pretty nice, 20 to con, which would be helpful, 22 for intelligence, which won't really do us a whole lot of anything, well, maybe for some skills, sure. Wisdom, 18, which will help with some will saves, but I don't particularly care. Charisma will finally be pumped up all the way to 30, which will be extremely helpful for when we talk about DC for our spells. Now, at level 1, the very first and obvious feat, in my opinion, is the one and only Weapon Finesse. And the reason for that is because we're not going to get it free from dipping into, say, Rogue or something like that. We might as well pick it up and pick it up early. Why? Because really Dex is our only attribute, physically speaking, that's going to help us attack anything. So might as well make sure that Dex is the only stat that's going to be used for our attacks. Now, whether we're talking about melee attacks, of course, these are light weapons, weapon finessable weapons, unarmed combat. It also includes melee touch attacks now, thanks to Weapon Finesse. And of course, Dex was always going to be there for our ranged attacks as well as our ranged touch attacks. So while 16 is not amazing, it's nothing to write home about. It isn't exactly pathetic, and that +3 is going to help us out, at least in the initial levels of this character, until we start getting some gear, getting some spells under our belt. So because of Weapon Finesse, it really helps this class not suck quite so much at the earlier levels, because you're not going to get a lot of spells. From here, we're going to go and talk about our spell picks. Now, it took a while for me to put this all together, and these are my suggestions. Again, there's different choices that you may or may not like, may disagree with. I have another slide after this, which is some possible replacements. If I just think that some of these spells aren't doing what I want, or might not be good enough for the content that I haven't seen yet, I may change it up a little bit, but by and large, this is what I've settled on. So let's go through them. I've labeled them based on color coding for the schools of interest to me, which are evocation, conjuration, transmutation, necromancy, and illusion. There are others down in here, of course. We're going to have divination as well as abjuration. So I didn't mention those because we're not using any ones that are going to have saves or spell resistance. Those are usually just straight up buffs as far as I'm concerned. So I'm not talking about those ones. These are labeled, color-coded specifically so that we can look at which spell focus or greater spell focus we might want to invest in. Now, I've already pretty much decided illusion isn't going to be my thing. Necromancy, we don't have enough spells that I'm going to pick from to merit necromancy. There's some good ones in here. I'm looking right at Umbral Strike. Undeath to Death is not bad. But the other ones seem to be ones that are no save required anyway, like Innervation, Eye Bite, Vampiric Shadow Shield, Vampiric Touch. Ray of Enfeeblement, though, does require a check. So again, there are some necromancy spells in here, just not enough to write home about. We have Evocation, Conjuration, and Transmutation, then Evocation being the obvious winner for someone that wants to do damage and make sure it sticks. But let's actually break them down by level now, shall we? So at level 1, after we get all the way to level 20, eventually you'll have picked 6 spells from this list. The 6 that you're going to pick are going to be ones like self-buffs or ranged attacks, some crowd control abilities, some ability to channel damage through your weapon, which is the whole point of being Eldritch Scion, really. So you are not a fighter, not a sorcerer, you're kind of both. I'm not really an expert at either. So Shocking Grasp is going to be useful early on, so is Shield. So these are 2 first spells that I would suggest picking. From there, any of these other ones are good choices and will more likely than not be picked whenever they make sense. If I'm feeling like I'm need a little more range damage, then maybe I'll grab Snowball. If I think the crowd control is important early on, I'll grab Grease. If I feel like I'm too slow and it's really dragging because I have to walk everywhere, Expeditious Retreat. Reduce Person will probably be one of the last ones because even though it's a great spell, there's a lot of penalties to it that I don't like. There's a lot of buffs to it that I do love. You know, the Dex bonus, the extra armor class bonus, the extra armor class bonus for being smaller, the extra chance to hit because I'm smaller and my targets are more likely to be bigger than me. There's a lot of good stuff here. Minus the strength kind of sucks, and the lower speed is a problem until we get things like Expeditious Retreat online. That's why I say it'll probably be one of the last, if not the last spell I pick from level 1. Notice we have Magic Missile, and you're probably wondering why it's not in part of this list. It's because we went Arcane Bloodline. The Arcane Bloodline allowed us to get free spells, like all the Bloodlines do. So Magic Missile is one of those free spells. We don't get it till level 3, so it does come online a little late in the earlier levels. But at level 3, now we do at least have 2 missiles that we're launching off instead of the lame 1. So at least it's useful now at this point, so that's not so bad. So it's in the list as well. And then notice we have a free pick at level 19. We have question marks next to these because A, currently the game is broken. I don't have to pick at 19 a spell from level 1. The game gives you 6 free spells for Arcane Bloodline at level 19. Those 6 spells can come from any spell level that you have access to, which is 1 through 6. It says in the tooltip that you're only supposed to get 1 from each level, but you do not have to actually pick that now. I'm assuming they'll fix that. If they fix that, then this is my suggestions for choices. If they don't fix that, then I'm happy with picking whatever spell I like. And there's 6 of them out there. I'm sure I could find 6 really good spells at level 4, 5, 6, maybe even level 3 that will help me out. But Vanish, yes, it's useful. I'd rather just chug a potion. Rave Enfeeblement is good, and since we are going to be going toe-to-toe with some of the fighter types, the ability to blast them at point-blank range and suck some of their strength away could save my bacon. But, again, it's not necessary. But between the 2 of these, I'd probably side with Rave Enfeeblement. If you go with the ones that we've picked up here, you'll note that I have at least 1 spell that has a reflex save to it, and at least 1 spell that has a fortitude save. That's Grease and Snowball, respectively. Shocking Grasp requires no save, and Grease and Snowball do not have any spell resistance associated with them. So at level 1, we actually have some pretty decent spells, depending on the situation. We have a couple different damage types, electric and cold, and from there, of course, Magic Missile comes online free, and that's some force damage as well. So we have some decent attacks already at level 1. Level 2 spells, we have another 6 that we get to pick from. So my suggestions are, again in no particular order, Mirror Image, Frigid Touch, which we would channel through our weapon, Acid Arrow, which is an amazing spell even if it doesn't do a lot of damage, Scorching Ray, which does a lot of damage but can be a problem because of its spell resistance, Glitter Dust, which I find is more of a utility spell. However, it's decent crowd control potential as well. It's an AoE effect. It has the potential to blind the target or targets in the area. And even if it doesn't blind them, they get coated with the dust that allows them to take a penalty, forces them to take a penalty to their sneak attack, to their hiding ability. So if they're trying to stealth, Glitter Dust can actually reveal them in a way that prevents them from stealthing quite so easily. Web, of course, for another crowd control ability and a different type of save. So again, we have will saves now, and we have reflex saves in this category up here. Acid Arrow is kind of important to me, simply because it has no save and no spell resistance. It's going to hit the mark because it's a ranged touch attack, and for those of you that don't know, your touch attacks, both range and melee touch attacks, operate off of the same armor class that you have to hit. So unless they have like amazing dexterity or something similar that buffs their touch attack armor class, then Acid Arrow is more likely than not going to hit relatively easily. So that'll be a nice spell. Scorching Ray has that same potential, but they could be resistant to the fire damage, which of course they could be resistant to the acid damage too, but they could also have spell resistance, and Acid Arrow doesn't have that problem. So I'm not really sure which one I would take first. I would let the game probably dictate that. If I think I'm going to be running into trolls, then either works. If I'm going to do those branded trolls, ones that are immune to fire, well then Acid Arrow is probably going to take a front seat. Frigid Touch is really nice, and even though technically speaking Shocking Grasp outdoes it in damage on almost every step and will rapidly pass it, Frigid Touch does a set amount of damage right out the gate, and it has of course no save associated with it too. Neither does Shocking Grasp, but Shocking Grasp just does damage. Frigid Touch has an effect associated with it. May not be stellar, but there will be something that happens to the bad guy, and it's pretty much guaranteed unless of course they're immune to that effect. Mirror Image, of course, for protection for ourselves. You can't stress that one enough. And again, we get invisibility free at level 5, so we didn't have to pick it. And it's a decent pick, so again, making Vanish almost obsolete. Now, we do get a free pick at level 9, and in this particular instance, I suggested, because you can pick a level 1 or 2 or 3 spell, I suggested level 2 spell called Sense Vitals. This allows us to do some sneak attack damage for short bursts of time. And some good news for you guys out there is not only is that damage, sneak attack damage, applicable to your weapon, it's applicable to any of your touch attack spells that you channel through that weapon. So I've actually hit a target while Sense Vitals was up. Pure dumb luck, they happen to be flanked by one of my teammates in the tutorial, and Frigid Touch went off and did a ridiculous amount of sneak attack damage that was cold, as well as a decent amount of sneak attack damage which was my weapon. So that was nice. So this is basically double dipping, if you will, for the damage potential for Sense Vitals. Really helpful. Level 19, again, if I'm forced to pick a level 2 spell, and I wouldn't have a problem with that because Resist Energy is relatively helpful. It's a little late for it to come online, but of the spells to pick in that level, Sense Vitals pretty much made me happy, and I really wouldn't have dipped into level 2 again if I didn't have to. So this is, again, a question mark. So from here, we go to 6 more spells that we'll pick at level 3 level. From here, we have 6 more spells to pick at level 3. We're going with Displacement, Fireball, Haste, Vampiric Touch, Slow, and Stinking Cloud. Now, why such a weird assortment? Well, one, there's not a whole lot of really good stuff in level 3. I mean, these are good spells, don't get me wrong, and Lightning Bolt, of course, is amongst them. That's why it's a question mark. I could just as easily swap out Fireball with Lightning Bolt and not feel bad. We already have a fire spell anyway, and Shocking Grasp is so far away from level 3 that Lightning Bolt could have its uses here. It's probably easier to hit targets with Fireball than it is with Lightning Bolt. This is a line attack. This is a AoE. It's circle so much as it's an oval, but whatever. It's a circle attack versus a line attack. So it's easier to get a big group balled up and then hit them with a fireball than it is to try to get them to stand in a straight line so I can hit them with Lightning Bolt. So that's why I went with Fireball instead. And, typical wizard type mentality. Who doesn't want to cast a Fireball spell, Displacement is extremely useful. There is a spell that we will see here then level 2 called Blur that we did not pick, but it's in our possibilities. It's just that Blur gets dwarfed by Displacement, and they don't stack. Displacement doesn't last very long, so Blur has its effects, but as you'll see, a 20% chance to miss versus a 50% chance to miss me. I'll take the 50% chance every time. Now, Haste, of course, can be picked at any time here in level 3. It's a good spell. There's no reason you shouldn't get it. Even if you're not going solo, it's a team-friendly buff. If you do go solo, still useful. You get an extra attack, you get a better chance to hit, you get some more armor class, you move faster. Doesn't last very long, but we can buff that a little bit with some extend or some extend metamagic rods. Vampiric Touch, of course, we want to get all of our melee touch attacks. We are an Eldritch Scion after all. So Vampiric Touch is particularly useful. We didn't take the one in level 1, the Corrosive Touch, because it is pretty lame sauce. And we already have Acid Splash and now Acid Arrow, so we're just going to bypass it. But Vampiric Touch has an effect that's particularly useful. There's still no save, so that's nice. Spell resistance is an issue, but Vampiric Touch allows us to add the health of damage that we inflicted on the bad guy to ourselves. And that health is temp health, and it lasts for, I believe, an hour. and that's right out the bat. So while it takes a while to have Vampiric Touch come online for the amount of damage it can do, it's 1d6 of damage up to 10d6, but that's only 1d6 every 2 caster levels. So it really takes a while for Vampiric Touch to really get all the way up to full potential. But it gets better and better every time we level, so that's kind of nice. Slow, of course, is a really nice AoE move to debuff the bad guys. So it fits along with our Grease, Glitter Dust, Web spells, so some crowd control. Same with Stinking Cloud, just a slightly different effect. It's a poison, if I'm not mistaken, even though it doesn't kill them. It just makes them nauseous. But that's pretty helpful in a Fortitude save. Notice how we have not only reflex saves, but we have will saves and Fortitude saves in this category. So we actually have access to every type of save, which is helpful. Remember, we want to be diverse. The ability to affect as needed a fighter, a rogue, a caster type. So reflex, fortitude, and will saves are all going to be stuff that we're going to use to full effect. Now we get, of course, at level 7, Dispel Magic for free. Not a spell I use a lot, but I can see its use. So what the hell, it's free, might as well take it. And if I'm forced to pick a spell from here, and I probably would, Lightning Bolt's not bad, especially if we already have Fireball. Might as well add another evocation that does a different type of elemental damage. But I could just as easily be convinced to pick Heroism. Now, Heroism lasts for 10 minutes per caster level, so at level 19 this thing's going to last us a long time. It's good, it's not great, and I know that because there's greater Heroism. But we may not pick that one up because it's way late for one thing. It only lasts for 1 minute per caster level, but at this level that's still pretty damn good. But there's other choices at this level that might be better. Now if we don't do that hard fast rule like I said and go one spell from each level like the tooltip says we have to, and do the cheat, which is pick whatever 6 spells I want, then I'll say screw Heroism, and I will definitely take greater Heroism because a +4 to hit is way better than +2. From here, level 4 spells, we can pick 6 of them. The 6 that I've suggested are Dragon's Breath, which is an amazing one and would have to be picked first because this gives you 4 different elemental types of damage right off the bat, and different ways for you to inflict that, whether it's a straight line or a cone. It just depends on which Dragon Breath you pick. Also notice that this Dragon's Breath does not have a spell resistance problem. They can bypass that immediately. There is a save, so you do want to make sure that reflex save is something that's not going to be an issue, so don't be using this on all those rogue types out there that's going to be dodging it left and right. Decreasing the damage, or perhaps in some cases making the damage non-existent, would kind of suck. But that's why we have other spells, like Shout. Shout is a spell that does sonic damage, which is sadly missed here in Dragon's Breath. But this sonic damage, again a cone, has a save. The save is a Fortitude save, and it also does not suffer from spell resistance. So both these spells really make this build extremely versatile, in my opinion. Ice Storm, of course, is nice, and while there's no save to it, doesn't need one. It's physical damage and cold damage. It's not amazing damage, but it's AoE, and it does another neat effect for us, which puts rough terrain basically for short periods of time out on the battlefield. And while that's a problem for me, it's also a problem for the bad guys, and I can get around this problem, which you'll see later, so that'll be nice. Now, from the last 2 picks, there's not a whole lot of level 4 that I thought was interesting. Shield of Dawn is potential. Phantasmal Killer and Illusion Spell again has potential. We're not going to capitalize on this like you'd think. Shield of Dawn doesn't have a save, and it doesn't impacted by spell resistance. It's a self buff, basically. We put an aura of flame around us, basically. Doesn't hurt us, but everything that hits us with a melee attack takes flame damage. So, cool. Might as well hurt them if they're hurting me, is what I say. So, I like it. It's not that it's going to be making or breaking this build, but it's definitely something to think about picking. From there, Phantasmal Killer was another one of those spells that's kind of like, it's a save or suck spell. If it works, they'll die. If it doesn't work, nothing will happen. Kind of what's the point? But I figured, what the hell? And again, there wasn't a whole lot at level 4 that I wanted beyond these original 4. So these ones are just kind of filler. At level 9, we get access to Dimension Door, but we don't actually pick it up till level 10. Why? Because we can't cast level 4 spells till then. So these numbers are literally based off the fact that if you were a sorcerer and you had this bloodline. So they never updated that for if you're an Eldritch Scion and has this bloodline. So there's different milestones for each. But I point it out to you just so you don't think that, oh, at level 9 I'll have this. No, you won't. You won't really have access to it until at least level 10. And of course, don't pick it because you'll get it for free. Now, as far as saves, again, in this level, we get saves for all of them. So we'll have reflex saves here, fortitude save there, and if I do pick this one, it'll be a will save, at least. I think there might be 2 saves associated with it, a will and a fortitude, but the will's at least the important part, because if it doesn't make that one, then it's pretty much useless. Level 19, again, if we forced to pick a spell from level 4, there's actually some good ones to pick. Actually, I would not mind having both of these spells. Innervation is a nice move. It's a race spell, and we're going to kind of specialize in race spells, which seems a little weird, but you'll see why here in a moment. But Innervation is a race spell that once I hit them, without any save, as long as they don't have spell resistance or are immune to the Innervation effect, they will take 1 to 4 negative levels, basically lowering their hit dice. If you actually take them to 0 with a move like this, they just straight up die. But at the very least, Innervation does a lot of good for you. Lowers their health, it'll lower their saves, all kinds of stuff that they're getting penalties for by having negative levels. So pretty good stuff. Obsidian Flow, on the other hand, a nice transmutation spell, doesn't have any spell resistance, so that's nice. It does have saves to it, and I want to say the saves for this one is reflex. Obsidian Flow does fire damage. Not great damage, but it's an AoE move, and again, kind of falls again in line with our crowd control abilities that you see in each level. So again, pretty useful spell. And again, Shout has that crowd control ability as well, even if it is a cone. Doesn't last for long, I think it's just like straight up 1 round, but it's still there, and it is helpful, and that's part of the fortitude save. Now, once we get to level 5, this is where we start to fall apart. We only get 5 picks from this one. Now, I'm not counting our free ones, of course. But I've picked some pretty good ones, I think. And we have to make a hard decision here. So Cloud Kill's kind of a must. And these are for those boss fights where if I just can't beat the guy, I know where he's standing, I can cast this spell at his feet, stand out a range so he doesn't aggro onto me, and just watch his health constantly go down thanks to the Constitution debuff of Cloud Kill. Assuming, of course, they're not immune to poison, because this is a poison attack, if I'm not mistaken. But this is helpful. It is a fortitude save, but spell resistance does not matter. So again, a really useful spell. Elemental Body 2, on the other hand, is kind of insurance policy. This one is, from what I've been seeing in the forums, is there's parts of the game, and I don't mean to ruin it for you, but I hear there's an attack, we'll just say it this way. There's an attack that if you have blood, which if you're a person, you probably should have blood, you're going to get hurt. But if you have Elemental Body 2, or any of the Elemental Bodies for that matter, on your character, that attack will not work on you, because you are an Elemental now, even if it's for the short term that this spell is up. I hear it's useful, I don't know that it will be, but I have it listed on here for that reason. Acid Spray is a decent attack. It falls in that same camp of Cone of Cold and Fire Snake for damage, except Acid Spray passes them both simply because it does the same 15d6 damage potential on the first round, and then if they failed that first save, they actually take, I want to say, 7d6 potential damage of acid on the second round. So it is a minor damage over time. And, you know, acid in the face, who doesn't love that? Now, of course, we have Vampiric Shadow Shield. Kind of falls in that category of Shield of Dawn. Self-buff, they hit me, instead of taking fire damage, they'll take, I think, negative energy damage. And, of course, part of that damage they do to themselves heals me, or part of the damage they do to me I heal from, so they do less damage. It's the overall arching theme here to me, and they suffer for it in the process. So I'm cool with it. Cone of Cold or Fire Snake are good additions to this list. I have to pick one or the other. And what this would really boil down to is, am I seeing a lot of cold attacks being useful? Or do I see that I need a lot of fire attacks? Fire Snake is a line attack, much like a Lightning Bolt or Acid Spray. Cone of Cold, just like the sound, is a cone attack, and therefore it's probably easier to line it up, but by and large, these are the same spell, just different types of damage. The only real plus to Fire Snake is if you're playing with a team, this will not hurt your team. It is teammate friendly. Cone of Cold is not. But again, if I'm trying to solo this character as much as possible, there really is no need to worry about having Fire Snake. It's just a good spell. Now again, we get at level 11 Break Enchantment for free. it's there, it's free, might as well take it. We will not get it actually until level 13, because that's when our level 5 spells come online though. And again, at level 13, we get a free spell pick, much like at level 9. At 13, my suggestion is one of these two. Icy Prison for single target, locking up a boss for some nice cold damage and preventing him from attacking you. So basically it's a hold monster with cold damage thrown in kind of spell, so to speak, and it's an evocation at that. And Shadow Evocation is the other option because it's utility. You can cast a illusory version of Fireball, Lightning Bolt, Shout, Ice Storm, or Volcanic Storm, I think is the other one it's called. And they will do the damage type in question. So I can do fire damage with this spell, or lightning damage, or sonic damage, or physical and cold, or physical and fire, just depending on which way I cast it. That's pretty useful, and a lot of utility with that. Good AoE moves, and a bunch of different types of saves. The weird thing about this one is they all start off with a will save. Then, if the spell you're mimicking has a save, like Fireball for instance, then that save kicks in after the will save. So they make or don't make their will save, it calculates damage based on that, and then they make or don't make their reflex save against the Fireball, and it calculates damage again. The good news for Shadow Evocation is that means you're doing different types of damage, fire, electric, like I said, and if you're doing elemental focus like we're going to do, you want to pick an elemental focus that, again, you can capitalize on. I'm going to suggest cold or possibly fire. Fire is the obvious choice because there's so many fire types of spells. However, cold spells do have a lot of utility in this game, and we're thinking about things like Snowball, Dragon's Breath, there's cold spells in there. We have, of course, Cone of Cold, and Umbral Strike is a cold spell. Icy Prison has a save for it. That's also cold damage. You get the idea. There's a lot of cold spell potentials in here that buffing the DC for those spells could be useful. Now, you'll notice that at level 19, when we get, or forced to pick a level 5 spell, and it's not a force because I actually do like the level 5 spells, I suggest Icy Prison and Shadow Evocation again. So whichever you didn't pick up at 13, I'm suggesting you pick up now at 19. And that's still a pretty good idea, I'd say. Now again, which one I pick at each level, it's going to depend on the gameplay. Which do I feel like I need? If I'm really having trouble with single targets, Icy Prison all the way. If I'm focusing on cold attacks with Elemental Focus Cold and Greater Elemental Focus Cold, again, Icy Prison's a pretty good choice. The Shadow Evocation, while having a lot of utility, I already have most, if not all of them spells anyway, so this is just more of the same. Yes, it's a higher difficulty, DC check, because it's cast as a level 5 spell versus the spells that they're mimicking, which are a lot of these level 3 stuff. Fireball, Lightning Bolt, Ice Storm is level 4, but again, this one is level 5. So, it's a little each. And of course, Shout's a level 4 spell as well. From there, though, now let's get on to level 6 and our final level of spell picks. 5 that you get to pick again, and again, in no particular order. Hellfire Ray, really good, single target, huge damage spell. Sirocco, which would probably be one of the first picks, along with Acid Fog, if I were to suggest 2 good solid picks right at the first chance you get to getting these things. Nice AoE move, really good fire damage, knockdown ability, fatigues and exhaust targets over time. You can stack it on itself. Sirocco's a really, really good spell. Acid Fog, of course, no save and no spell resistance. Again, a really good spell. Not a ton of damage. It's kind of like which would you rather have, Acid Arrow or Scorching Ray? Well, it's a trick question. You want both for 2 different reasons. You want damage, Scorching Ray. You want damage that's consistent, you want Acid Arrow. Same difference here in AoE format. And that's how I treat these 2 spells, much like these 2. Disintegrate is an amazing spell for damage. If they fail their save, big if, but if you know your target, this is a pretty good spell to inflict on somebody, because at level 20, it can do 40 D6 damage. That's 40 to 240 points of damage one time, zipping a target. And even if they make their save, it does lame damage, but it still does something. So I don't know that I'm happy about the fact that the damage gets nerfed so badly, but I'd rather not just straight up miss. Looking right at you there, Phantasmal Killer. So at least it does something. It doesn't do elemental damage though, so there's really no good way to buff this other than buffing transmutation spells. And it's not that that's a bad call. We'll see that here in a moment. Umbral Strike is another fine choice, but I tag it along with one of my final picks. And I have to decide between Umbral Strike, Chain Lightning, or Dragonkind 1. And these all seem like good solid choices and all weird choices. But let's break them down individually, shall we? Umbral Strike does two different types of damage. Cold, so again, elemental focus cold could play a factor here. That's nice. But it does half cold damage and half, I want to say, negative energy damage. And that's something, because, why not hit him with two different things? If he's cold resistant, at least he'll get hurt by something. Kind of the similar attitude of Hellfire Ray, where half the damage is fire damage, and the other half of the damage, I think, is still fire damage, but it's unresisted fire damage. I may have that wrong. It may be fire and negative, or fire and positive, or who the hell knows. But the point is still the same. Even if they're resistant to fire, this will still do damage to that target. Only if the spell resistant, that could be an issue for us. And of course, missing, because this is a ray attack, much like Disintegrate. But again, these are touch attacks. So is Umbral Strike. Chain Lightning, on the other hand, is adding to our AoE goodness at level 6. So again, electrical attack, now zipping through the bad guys. And again, reflex save for it. Notice, of course, we have Dragonkind 1. It's the only transformation that we really get in here that I like, anyway. Dragonkind 1 kind of comes up late now at this point, but being able to turn into any kind of dragon and having all the abilities that are associated with that, even if it's a lame dragon, it's still a dragon. I think we can all agree. And if I'm not mistaken, you can cast spells while in dragon form, so bonus. Plus, I'm fairly certain you're resistant to whatever elemental damage the dragon normally does. So again, bonus. Plus the bonuses to your physical stats and blah, blah, blah. So, looks cool, feels cool, and we even get a dragon's breath out of it. The reason for the star is because obviously you're changing, so there's no spell resistance. However, there is an attack associated with this, besides your obvious meleeing dragon attacks. I'm talking about the breath attack the dragon gets. I don't know if the spell resistance is applicable for here, or if a save is even applicable. I would assume so. I would assume it would be a reflex save. What kind, I don't know. And by kind, what I mean is, this is coming from a transmutation spell. So is this the DC based off of my spell focused transmutation? Or would it be more likely off of evocation like Dragon's Breath is? I'm not sure. I haven't tested it. If you guys do know, feel free to post that down below. That's good information for everybody. But the point is still the same. A good spell, utility-wise spell, much like Dragon's Breath. I don't know I need it. And at that late level, that might be a waste. But I like these three for one of my last picks. From there, you'll notice that we have a reflex save with Sirocco. We also have a reflex save more likely than not because of the Dragon's Breath and Dragonkind. Chain Lightning. There's a Fortitude save associated with Disintegrate and Umbral Strike. And Umbral Strike not only does damage, but it also has the potential to blind the target. So another reason why this one looks really appealing is just Disintegrate has so much damage potential. It just kind of crowds it out and makes it look real sexy. This one still does consistent good damage. There's no reason not to take it. And the difference between this and this is, while if they make the save on this and it does minimum damage, if they make the save on this, the damage gets cut in half. And it's a Fortitude save, not a reflex save. And therefore we don't have to worry about, rogues evading all the damage, which would really piss me off. Of course, that applies for here too. But again, 3d6 or 5d6 or whatever lame damage you do if they make their fort save, compared to, I think this one goes up to like 20d6. So cut that in half. That'd be like 10d6. So still the equivalent of a fireball spell up and in their face. Single target, of course. But definitely more damage if they make the save. They don't get blinded, but they weren't getting blinded by this one either. So, level 13, again, we have access to True Seeing, but we don't get it until level 16, because that's when we get our level 6 spells. But again, free spell, good spell, might as well have it. Free pick at level 17, and that can be any spell now from level 1 all the way to level 6. I'm suggesting a level 6 spell called Tar Pool. This is a nice transmutation spell, nice AoE damage spell, nice crowd control type of spell, does fire damage, and there is no spell resistance associated with it. Again, another big benefit for us. Remember, we're not going to have spell penetration on this build so much, And we aren't going to necessarily have the best DCs either. So stuff that ignores saves, stuff that ignores spell resistance are pretty much our bread and butter. So this is adding to that list, even if it's only on one of the categories. Of course, at level 19, when we have a free spell pick from 1 through 6, or whatever I decide to do, here's our 3 really good examples of what I might pick at level 19 for a level 6 pick. Greater Heroism, we already mentioned. Eye Bite's particularly nice and appealing looking. It doesn't last long, but you really want to floor somebody. Eye Bite looks like a really good move. It locks onto a target. They can't really save against it, but they do have spell resistance, could be a thing. It is based on hit dice. So while normally I shy away from that, it's based on hit dice in so much that it gets better if they're weaker. The stronger they are, it still has an effect. So therefore, it does have some utility. Undeath to Death, on the other hand, has great utility, but only in certain circumstances. Hence the reason why it's kind of a, I'm not sure. Does good damage though, and for undead killing AoE style, this could be a game changer. So I have it on the list. So again, as you can see, we cover all the different stopping points here for saves. Reflex quite a bit, sure, which is typical. Fortitude sometimes. We get plenty of fort saves in here, which is really nice, especially in the higher levels. And we do get a few will saves. Nothing really to write home about. Glitter Dust is helpful. Slow is definitely going to be helpful. Phantasmal Killer, probably not so much. As far as the one in here, where is it? Shadow Evocation. And I can't remember if Icy Prison is reflex or not, but I'm fairly certain it is. The trick then is literally knowing your target, knowing what kind of saves they're capable of making and what kind of saves that they're going to suck at. So it'd really be nice to have that information going in. Now, of course, we can save scum, test some stuff out and find out, oh, we really want to use that spell instead. Okay, and we can totally do that, but it's just maybe something that we have to do periodically to get through certain levels. From here, this is our alternate spell picks. These are ones that if I'm feeling that I already have too much damage in one type, maybe I need some AoE loving at level 1, I could swap something out and grab Burning Hands instead. It's okay. It's nothing to write home about. Nice small cone, but definitely helpful. Certainly there's a good damage there. 5d4 I want to say as a cone. So up to 20 points of damage to a bunch of bad guys. It's pretty cool, but not great. Enlarged Person, of course, is interesting, but again, not great. There's a buff to your strength, but there's a penalty to your dex, which is not good for us. There's a penalty to your armor class, which is not good to us. There's a penalty to your dex armor class, which is not good to us. You see the problem we have in here. And we have a less likely chance to hit them. You would think more likely because we'll get more strength. But remember, we went Weapon Finesse. So we're still working off of the fact that Weapon Finesse is how we're going to probably hit our targets. So again, not the best spell. Notice how we have a semicolon here. And the reason for that is literally, these are the spells before the semicolon at each level that you can pick as you're leveling up. The ones after the semicolon are the ones you have to pick. They become available, so to speak, in those free spell picks that I mentioned before, level 9, 13, 17, and of course the 6 you have access to at level 19. So if you really want your Piercing Scream, the earliest you could possibly get this is level 9. It's a decent pick. Sonic damage, scales well, has an effect. Yes, they can save. Yes, spell resistance is an issue, so it's not perfect, but it's auto hit if I'm not mistaken, so there's no roll, no check for you to miss. It's just, do they make the save, do they not? And it just reduces the damage if I'm not mistaken. Hurricane, and of course removing the negative effect. Hurricane Bow is a potential buff for yourself, increasing your ranged weapon damage. So 1d8 bow damage would become, I believe, a 2d6 damage. Of course, you can stack that with becoming large. So you become a large person, you become a bigger weapon category size, and then you use Hurricane Bow, and then again, the damage goes up again. I believe it goes from 1d8 to 2d6. 2d6 then would become 3d6 if I'm not mistaken. And that's actually pretty decent damage from a single bow strike. So, not bad. I don't know that I would go that route. I would probably use that trick more likely if I would do Eldritch Archer, but that's to each their own. Protection from alignment, now we're talking abjurations. Stunning barrier. Protection from alignment's decent. I could probably get this on scrolls, potions, wands. I'm not particularly worried about it, but if I had to pick something else, I could see getting it. Stunning barrier is kind of interesting. It's not as good as protection from alignment. However, it does have that one wonderful effect that when you get struck in melee combat by the first guy that strikes you, they do a will check, which is kind of weird to get a will check at this low level, and it's probably a fighter that you're fighting at that level. So a will check could probably floor that little jackass, and it stuns them. Now, it probably won't save you that much, but at the very least, if I get hit, I'd rather know that he's taking some kind of penalty for it, and I have a chance to book out a dodge and save my little butt. Drink a bunch of potions and get back into the fray while this guy's stunned, even if it is only for like a round. Still helpful. Level 2 possible picks. It could be, again, blur, 20% chance to miss me. I'm okay with that. But again, while it lasts, I think, a minute per caster level, displacement is definitely better. Just doesn't last as long. But that's why they make extend Metamagic rods, right? So, Molten Orb, again, another decent AoE spell. Does fire damage, splash damage to the guys around it, decent first damage to the first guy, and it damages over time if I'm not mistaken. So that's not bad, but it's not great either. Stone Call is one of those weird ones. Think of this one almost like Ice Storm, except it's all physical damage. It hits them. It's guaranteed to hit the guys in the area of effect. There's no save. There's no spell resistance, so guaranteed damage is guaranteed. That's what I was told. It's just lane damage. The only reason that it's actually an honorable mention is not only is the damage guaranteed, it's also one of those effects that literally puts that bad terrain, whatever you call it, difficult terrain in the area. And there's ways for us around that. It's that helpful for us. Maybe get out of the way if the bad guys are coming for us. Effortless armor, again, another honorable mention. We are going armor for this build, more likely than not. So since we have access to it, we might as well use it. Effortless armor will help us out so I don't have to take the armor off if I want to do like a disable traps check, stuff like that. So, okay. But it's not necessary, I don't think, because I can just plan around it. But if I feel like it's annoying to constantly take my armor off and then remember to put it back on again, yeah, I can see effortless armor making an appearance. Bone Shaker. Now these are the ones you'd have to pick again with your freeze picks. Bone Shaker, Burning Arc, Protection from Arrows, and Pernicious Poison, which is a weird one, which is why we're leaving it for last. Bone Shaker is an automatic guaranteed damage. There's a save, I want to say it's a Fortitude save, for halving the damage, but you're still going to hurt that target, and it does scale nicely as you level up, so not bad. Burning Arc, on the other hand, is a spell that I misjudged. This is a decent, and I can't stress decent enough, AoE move to the point where I like it better than Burning Hands. No surprise, it's one level higher. I even like it better than Molten Orb. Again, same level, but still much more use out of this one, I'd say. Instead of being a damage over time like Molten Orb has the potential of doing, this is just straight up damage, which is always nice. And you can get this up to 10d6 of damage for the first guy you hit. Boom, right in the face. From there, it bounces between guys, bad guys, and it does half that damage. So if 10d6 is our max, every other guy it hits from that point on will do 5d6 damage potential. Yes, they can save out of it. Yes, spell resistance is an issue, and yes, they can be resistant to fire damage. But this is a pretty decent spell, it turns out. Protection from arrows, for the obvious reasons of picking it. You rapidly out-level the usefulness of this. I'd rather probably just get potions and chug it, or maybe get a scroll every now and again and use it if I feel like I need it. But having it on tap, there's nothing wrong with that, so I could see it being helpful. Pernicious Poison, now this is a weird one. This one by itself isn't going to do anything that makes you happy. It lowers their fortitude saves against poison. That's it. There's no save for that though for you, so that's nice. When could this be useful? One, if you're using spells like Stinking Cloud, which is technically a poison. Cloud Kill, I believe, is a poison. And I'm sure there's other spells that I'm not even thinking about that are also considered poisons. And therefore, this would help you land those spells. You're flooring their saving throws by 4 points with this spell. Pretty much guaranteed, except for, of course, spell resistance. The downside of that is you have to now use 2 spells to do what you want. Another use for this, though, could be, remember, you are a spell combat capable caster. What that means is I can cast a spell and in the same round attack with my weapon. Perhaps a weapon that is a poison weapon, an enchanted magical blade that has a poison effect to it. Why do I want to make sure that that poison effect lands? Well, let's hit him with some pernicious poison first. And this is the only real reason that this one's on the list. I thought about this, dismissed it as kind of folly, but I do like the idea, and this could definitely be fun. If someone tries this out before I have a chance to, tell me what you think about it. If you found a cool weapon, where did you find the weapon? What does the poison damage do? Is it strength, con, dex based? What does it effect does it have? Let me know. I'm just curious what you guys do with this. Level 3, there's literally no other spell as you level up that I would pick. They're all on this list over here. So this is really it. If you're not getting lightning bolts, the only other one that's in this list, and it's already down here. That's the only other one that I could put here, and it's already on the other page. From there, though, the only ones that I could think of getting as secondary possibilities was protection from energy, for the same reason that resist energy was on the list from the page before. Protection from energy, similar, but not the same, could help you out. Summon Monster 3, on the other hand, has a lot of potential. And let me tell you why that 3 is on the list and not 1 and 2. Yes, I could have picked 4, 5, and 6, sure, but you have better spells than that. But at level 3, you have a lot of spell castings per day. I could totally see summoning a monster at a bad guy's feet, distracting them, flanking them with that monster, and then using Sense Vitals, which you saw on the last page, for some really nice sneak attack damage for me, and that would help. Notice, of course, that there is no save for you summoning a monster, and there's no spell resistance for you summoning a monster. So again, if you're coming against targets that are saving all the time and have spell resistance, they don't have it against the monster you summoned. Summon a monster at his feet and let the monster take over. Now again, why 3? This is the first spell you can summon, that I can think of anyway, that's capable of summoning 3 different ways. You can summon one tough monster, a level 3 quote-unquote monster, 1d3 plus 1 monsters from the level 2 spell, which is I think wolves or some such. Level 1 spell, you can do 1d5 plus 1, I think, of the attack dogs, or where the hell it's called, which is the level 1 summon monster spell. So this is 3 different ways of casting from this spell. Do I need a lot of meat shields out there just for distraction while I make my escape, or to buff up, in case like poop hits the fan and I haven't buffed up yet? Summon monster 3, summon a bunch of mutts. If I need to have just a few monsters that are a little more tougher, give me a chance to do some of that sneak attack damage and spread the loving around, summon monster 3, summon those wolves where you do 1d3 plus 1. If I want to have something that's going to last for a while and really quote-unquote tank for me for a bit, summon monster 3, summon the single monster that you get from here. I think it's a monitored lizard. It's not great, it's not perfect, but it does have its uses. You can also use the old tried and true tricks, though, of here's a trap that I know I can't disarm. I need to go this way, summon your monster on it. Let the monster trigger it while you're at a safe distance. Yes, the monster may die, so what? It was a summoned monster anyway. Point is, you didn't die, and that's why you did that. So, we do this in Neverwinter Nights 2 all the time. I'm sure it would work in this game too, and it's something that you can try. From there, level 4 possibilities. Controlled Fireball, greater invisibility. Well, let's do the Fireball one first. Why is it not on my actual pick list? Because we already have Fireball. Hell, we got Fireball technically twice because we're going to get Shadow Evocation, which can cast an illusory Fireball. So why do I need a third? This one won't hurt me. So it's that, and cast it at my feet when I'm surrounded and pinned in a corner, and just cast it on my toes and damage everyone around me with a big fiery blast. That's cool. It does the same damage as Fireball though, so meh. The DC's 1 higher because it's a level 4 spell. So there's that. That's a plus. If I convinced myself that I'd really want this spell, I would not pick Fireball here. I'd pick Lightning Bolt here instead. But that's just me. Do I need it? Not really. And again, I got much better choices, in my opinion, already over here. Shout, Dragon's Breath alone make my day for a level 4 damage pick. But Controlled Fireball could be a close contender. Greater Invisibility, again, I like being able to do sneak attack damage. I don't like having to re-stealth up each time I do sneak attack damage. Greater Invisibility will allow me to do sneak attack damage for a good long while. There could be a possibility that this is not broken, but not perfect. Let me give you a for instance. And I haven't tested this yet, but this is a possibility. I have heard from people that have said don't pick greater invisibility because invisibility and vanish are better. They are not, because you come out of stealth once you use them. However, what they told me was this: greater invisibility, yes, I can kill a target and I stay invisible. Then I have to pick the next target, which doesn't seem like a big deal. I'm soloing anyway, so what? I'm happy to pick the next target. But now I think what they're trying to tell me online is this. Let's say I have 3 attacks in a round, weapon attacks, okay? I can hit you once, twice, 3 times. I'm invisible. With greater invisibility, I hit you once, I hit you twice, you die. Now I should have a 3rd attack, which means I can hit his buddy standing right next to him, but I haven't clicked him fast enough. Or, even if I do click him fast enough, there is no fast enough. It just negates the rest of my attacks that round. So instead of getting all 3 attacks in a round, maybe I only get 1 because I killed my mark. Yes, I'm happy I killed my mark, so I don't really have a problem with that, but wasting attacks is wasting attacks. I would rather attack them, and then as soon as they're dead, switch targets and immediately attack his friend. So maybe that's what they're trying to tell me here. I haven't tested it. If you do know that information, again, please post that information down below for everybody to enjoy, because I would like to know that. But I can see this being a decent pick. I can also see finding scrolls for this and just using those. Now, here's the ones that we can pick for the free spell picks, not as we level up, but as we just get those free spell picks. Animate Dead, for the same reason that Summon Monster 3 is on this list, even if it's a slightly different damage type. And I do like the Skeleton Horde, especially if you're going to try to go Necro Lord. There's enough necromancy spells in your picks, whether it's free spell picks or as you level up, that are decent, that you can make a passing Necro Lord with an Eldritch Scion, sure. So why not grab Animate Dead? But again, it's level 4 and we have better picks. Bone Shatter, single target, automatic damage. Yes, there is a save for half damage. Does a lot of damage. Much better than Bone... Where the hell did it go? Bone Shaker? I had it somewhere. Yeah, right up here. Bone Shaker. Bone Shatter does more damage, pound for pound wise, and it has an effect associated with it too. If they make the Fortitude save, the effect's gone in half damage. But if they don't, the effect kicks in. I think that they're stunned or some such because of their bones trying to jump out of their body, and it freaks them out. And they take a crap ton of damage. So even if you don't kill them, they're screwed over for a round. That's pretty useful. I could totally see that being a decent pick. But it's single target again. And at level 4, you really should be hoping for really good single target damage or amazing AoE damage. And Bone Shatter just doesn't seem to do it for me. But I could definitely see it as a possibility. Crushing Despair and Fear for the same general reason. Some crowd control ability. One's an enchantment, which you wouldn't think, because Crushing Despair to me feels more like a necromancy spell, but it's not. Fear, of course, is a necromancy spell, and it's the only quote-unquote scaredy cat spell that I like of the first 3, because Cause Fear sucks, and so does Scare, simply because they're low level, and you outlevel them because it's based on HD. Fear does not have an HD cap, therefore it makes the grade. Crushing Despair, nice AoE effect. I want to say it's a cone as well, and this is the one that if it works, big if, because it's a will save, but if it works, what do we get? We get like -2 to attack, -2 to damage, -2 to saves, -2 to skills. You know, there's a whole bunch of crap that hits those guys. So again, a pretty damn decent spell. I'm fairly certain this is AoE, but it's possible this one's single target. I just can't remember now. Volcanic Storm, it's only on here because, again, it's similar to Ice Storm. You don't have to pick it. It's the same exact spell. It's just fire damage for cold damage. Swapping them out. It still does physical damage, and then instead of cold, it does fire damage, and then it does the bad terrain effect, just like Ice Storm does. So it's the same type of spell. But it's cool. Level 5, again, nothing as you level up that I would suggest that wasn't already mentioned on the other page. As you get free spell picks, here's some really decent choices though. Constricting Coils, this is Hold Monster. You guys know I love this one. This is Hold Monster at the same level as Hold Monster, but with damage. Does everything that Hold Monster does, plus more. and it's the same kind of saves, and it's the same school. Why would you not pick Constricting Coils over Hold Monster? I have no idea. Dismissal, we don't have the ability to dismiss people's summons. So again, just like we're summoning monsters or undead at the feet of the bad guys, they can do the same to us. Dismissal can make that go away, or at least help. So that could be useful, but we didn't pick it necessarily. Echolocation for some utility, basically like blind sight for a certain range. Self buff, decent. Not sure it's perfect, but I've never tried it, so it's there. Phantasmal Web, we mentioned this in conjunction with Phantasmal Putrefaction. I think that's the name of this one. These are interesting / sucky all in the same time because there's 2 saves associated with each of them. A will save and a reflex save, a will save and a fortitude save. The good news is for both of them, as long as they fail the will save, something bad happens to them. Pretty much guaranteed. It's just not as bad as it could be if they make the second save. But I could see the use of them, especially again if you were making an illusion-based caster. Looking right at you, Mithrils with your Gnome Sorceress. But Phantasmal Web and Phantasmal Putrefaction make the grade because of that. If you're going illusion, do that. From there, level 6, these ones are a little weird. Greater Dispel Magic, obvious reasons we didn't have it for free. Could be useful, I don't know, we'll see. Transformation, on the other hand, as you level up, could be a really nice pick. This is the one that basically turns you into a fighter. For all intents and purposes, you cannot cast spells once you transform. However, you do get a high BAB score as a result, and you do get a plus to your fortitude saves, which again is particularly useful, especially if you cast down like a poison cloud of some kind, then transform, run into it, and just start meleeing the hell out of them in the cloud. I could see that as being a good combat tactic. Again, wasting kind of 2 spells, but if it saves the day, it's not a waste then, is it? But it's not as cool as Dragonkind as far as I'm concerned. The reason that transformation kind of is losing its appeal to me is because once you get gear that buffs your strength, your dex, and or your con, transformation doesn't do as much because it buffs your strength, your dex, and your con, but only as an enhancement. So if you have enhancement from gear or other spells, transformation won't do anything for you for those 3 stats. You still get the increased BAB, you still get the increased fortitude saves, so there is that. But it does lose its shine when you realize that I could get gear that kind of outperforms this. And then if you get for free spell picks for level 6, we have some possibilities that are pretty interesting but a little weird. Chains of Light for a different kind of hold monster type spell. Whereas the other ones were more will saves. This one I believe is a reflex save. So again, one you wouldn't want to use on a rogue, but one I could definitely use on a fighter or a wizard and lock them down. That can be useful. Circle of Death, for obvious reasons, especially if we're soloing, because I don't think Circle of Death is teammate friendly. But if it isn't teammate friendly, who cares if I'm soloing? I get swarmed by especially a lot of little bitty guys. Think of being bum rushed by a bunch of lower level minions. While I could probably survive the fight, sure, that's a lot of attacks coming my way in a round. And if I can just wipe away a lot of them by casting a single spell, like Circle of Death, why not? Cloak of Dreams is kind of an interesting one to me. I've yet to test it out, really. This is the one that basically is what sleep wants to be. This is a self cloak that you put around yourself, kind of like an armor or a shield. Think of your Shadow Shield spell we just mentioned in the last page, or the Shield of Dawn spell, when it lets them take fire damage. This is one if they get within melee range of you. I believe they just have to be within range. They don't have to attack you. They make a will save or they fall asleep. And this does not have an HD cap to it if I'm not mistaken. So this one's kind of nice. This could really floor a lot of those will save weak characters that are coming up to punch you in the face, i.e. fighter types. This could come in super handy, or it could be a complete waste of your time. I'm not sure. Haven't tested, but this could definitely break some stuff, especially if you got fighters and rogues that are susceptible to this and start taking naps just because they get near you and they want to melee you. This could be extremely helpful. Cold Ice Strike is on here because it's similar to your Fire Snake spell or your Acid Spray spell. It's a beam, it's a lightning bolt type beam spell, and does ice damage, obviously. Pretty good amount, 15d6 if I'm not mistaken. Elemental Assessor is a beam array attack, I should say. So this falls within our ranged touch attack category. This one's kind of weird in that it does all 4 elemental types of damage: coal, fire, electric, and acid. Sadly, no sonic, I don't believe. But from those 4, they do, I want to say 2d6 of each of them on the first strike. From there, whichever one does the most damage, it will tick for up to 1 to 4 more rounds for doing, I want to say, 46 of damage each round of that same elemental type. So let's say cold was the highest rolling hit for whatever reason, whether they were resistant to the other types or just happened to be that cold hit higher than the others. It'll tick at least 1 more time for cold damage, possibly 4 more times for cold damage. Boom, 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 boom. If you get lucky and it does all 4, yeah, that's a pretty good spell. I can maximize that, but I'd have to maximize that with a rod instead of me, because it's a level 6 spell and I don't have access to level 7, 8, or 9. So it kind of doesn't really make the grade because of that, but it could be cool. Notice how we also get Phantasmal Putrefaction. We mentioned that just like we did Phantasmal Web, but again, we reiterate it. If you're going Illusion, a decent-ish spell, AoE effect if I'm not mistaken. If they fail the will save, they do take an effect. If they, in this case, they fail the fortitude save, they have a really nasty time. They're basically puking up their guts. They feel like their guts are spilling out or some such, and it really messes with the bad guys. So pretty good spell if it works. Notice again we have access to, even in these categories, access to all the different save types. Reflex, fortitude, will. There's just one level here that's just kind of lackluster, but every other level seems to be pretty damn good. These aren't my favorites, but these are ones that I could see working, or that some people might enjoy instead of the ones that I picked before. Now let's talk about the different types of schools that we're going to talk about, or the different types of elemental damage we can do based on the spells that I picked on the very first page here. Now, if we go for evocation, the reason we're mentioning this is because some of the spells require spell saves, which means a DC check, right? So the higher our DC, the better chance that we are landing these attacks for full damage, or the effect we want, the stun, the nausea, the whatever we're trying to do, the instant kill. The higher the DC, the more likely we are to land these things. So it's kind of important. We're not the best caster ever, but we're trying to be. So this is what we're going to work on. Which school should I specialize in, is what we're basically saying. So if we have spell focus and greater spell focus, where should I put those 2 feats? In evocation, conjuration, or transmutation? Necromancy is kind of lackluster. There's only about 3 spells that we picked, and they're mostly fortitude saves. Illusion, actually they're all fortitude saves, good. Illusion, there's only 2 that we really saw in there that was interesting, and again, that's not counting Phantasmal Web or Phantasmal Putrefaction. And again, they're always going to be will saves at the very least up front, so it's kind of, if, and there's other people that rock the illusion, again, looking at you, Mithrils, with your gnome sorceress. If you're going to go that route, great, but you really want to be a full sorcerer instead of an Eldritch Scion, because while Shadow Evocation is nice, greater Shadow Evocation, which we do not get as an Eldritch Scion, is amazeballs. So, I'm not going to get it, so sadly we will have to just scrap these 2 as just, we have the spells, we just won't be able to buff them as much as we'd like. But of these 3, green being the best, yellow being the second best, red being the worst. Still good though, so basically gold plate, silver, and bronze. I would actually probably think about this. I'd probably switch these out. Conjuration is not as appealing as I once thought. Evocation, because there's up to 9 different spells that we're talking about here that require a save, if I pick the ones that I pick. That's a lot. And there is at least one in there that's a fortitude save, and that's Shout, which, again, is decent and helpful. It's not anything really to write home about, but it's there. I'd rather it be at least part of my list instead of having them be all reflex saves. So there's that. Reflex saves, for those of you that don't know, is a problem for me, simply because there are feats out there that can lessen your damage based on you making a save that's a reflex save. Looking right at those rows with that evasion and improved evasion feats. So that's an issue for me. Them taking half damage or 0 damage really pisses me off, especially when I've invested so much time in casting a spell at those little bastards. But I can always switch over and do fort, or cast from a different school. So sure, there's that. But again, they could make those saves too. Just because I have a fortitude save and conjuration with my little snowball spell doesn't mean that he won't evade that as well with his high dexterity. Remember, this is a ranged touch attack we're talking about. So conjuration may not be the gold standard that I thought it was. I've tried it, just testing it out. It's good, it's just not great. Evocation really is probably the way I would go. Transmutation, though, is a close runner-up, and while this is considered the bronze run now, if I were to reorder this would be the gold, this would be the silver, and conjuration, sadly, would be the bronze. For those of you that don't know, there's transmutation spells that we have in here that are all over the place, but we have good reflex ones in there, and fortitude ones in there, 2 and 2. And we even have one in there that's a will save, so that literally covers all our bases. So if I really need one spell that will do something, Transmutation School will have at least one spell that will do what I need it to do. Now the downside is some of those spells in the Transmutation School don't do damage. Some of the, like for example, one of those transmutations was I want to say slow, and then we had web. So again, reflex and fort and will, they're there, but I'd rather it be the ones that do damage. So that's why we keep going back to evocation. But there's still good stuff in here, and this transmutation does have a couple of really good hard-hitting spells. One of them being disintegrate. Again, you saw that as a level 6 spell. Really good damage, 40d6, and having to miss that fortitude save, really be nice to see that 240 proc off someday. So I can see transmutation being good, just not probably what I'll go for. Now, from that, if I go for school focus evocation and greater school focus, spell focus evocation and greater spell focus evocation, that's all well and good. But I have other feats too. Remember, these are damaging elemental types of spells. So there's elemental focus and greater elemental focus as well. So let's look at the elemental types of damage that is out there in the spells that we picked. So we have 6 to 7 spells out there that have saves that do fire damage. Sadly, they're all reflex saves. Again, my contempt for the reflex save for when it's me casting the spell and them making the save. Other way around, I love a reflex save, but sadly, that's not the case here. But that's a lot of spells, so that's a pretty good chance that that reflex save will be missed if we bump it, especially if they're in the evocation school, which many are. So you can see the synergy we're already getting right now from going fire evocation. But I could just as easily go cold evocation, and I'll tell you why. A, some of those cold spells aren't in evocation, they're in conjuration, like your snowball spell, which is still good. And I like buffing it up a little bit, making sure that that stagger effect lands. It's a pretty good spell. So I could see going that route. And then we have fortitude and reflex saves in this category. So again, we're covering 2 of 3 different save types by buffing up cold. That's cool, and this is the only one that does that, because everybody else falls within that reflex category for elemental. Cold does too, but that snowball spell, and there's even another one, the Umbral Strike, that I suggest getting as a level 6 spell that does cold / negative damage, that does a blind effect. That's a fortitude save for removing the blind effect and a fortitude save for having the damage. I could see cold spell being buffed on that. That'd be cool. Not enough to go cold necromancy, because that would just be some dumbass shit. But I've toyed with the idea of cold and transmutation, or fire and transmutation. Fire and transmutation isn't horrible. Going back just to show it to you. Transmutation again are the blue. For instance, we have web, again no damage. We have slow, again no damage. We have obsidian flow, now we're talking. And that's fire damage. So if we did transmutation and fire elemental focus, we could get some fun out of hit. From there, disintegrate is not elemental damage, but it'll still be benefiting from the school focus, the spell focus for transmutation. Tar pool, on the other hand, if we pick it like we're supposed to, that's transmutation. There's no spell resistance, and it does fire damage as well. So it's kind of like obsidian flow on crack, so to speak. So stack both those down and have some fun. And again, if you went transmutation fire, while yes, we're not buffing our elemental, or our evocation school, many of those evocation spells are fire spells. So at least we're buffing it a little bit. It's not amazing, but it's there, and we could benefit from it. So, it's a thing. But we'd probably go fire or cold, and evocation is my bet. I would probably like to try a cold evocation, but I know me. More spells mean more chances to hit it. Fire evocation would be the obvious choice. But again, I still like the idea of that fortitude save, and especially for buffing that necromancy spell, that level 6 one, Umbral Strike, if I pick it. Cold could be really cool at that point, because being able to blind a mark and do a decent amount of damage to that jackass is a pretty good idea. From there, though, this pretty much covers our DC checks. And why do I care? Remember, we are not a full caster, and everyone's going to be like, Brother Mutant, you're wasting your time. Your DC is going to suck. Not true. So let's break down what DC is first. So for everybody that doesn't know, you get a DC of your spell. Everyone gets a 10 already. Think of it like armor class, right? So you already have a 10 slapped on there. Then you get the rank of the spell, which is 1 through 6, obviously, and that's not going to change for us, really. So that's set in stone. Then we have our casting bonus, whatever it is. In this case, charisma. And I can get my charisma up to a reasonable 30. That gives me a plus 10 bonus. So then 10 plus 10 plus 1, 10 plus 10 plus spell level means I got a DC of 21 to 26, depending on what type of spell I'm casting, right? Well, now throw on some stuff here. First off, we're arcane bloodline. For those of you that don't know, by picking the arcane bloodline, if I make a Metamagic Feat spell besides heighten, I get a plus 1 to the DC. So that means any spell level 1 through 6, or sorry, 1 through 5, sorry, not 6, 1 through 5, I can buff up to a level 2 through 6 spell, and I would get a plus 1 to the DC. So that's already a step in the right direction. We have spell focus and greater spell focus for evocation at least. So that's another 2. So now we went from 1 to 3. Then you're going to have elemental focus and greater elemental focus. 3 now becomes a plus 5. Then throw on the school specialization that we get by leveling up as an Eldritch Scion and pick evocation again. Plus 5 becomes plus 7. Then, and this is the fun part, by going all the way to level 20, we become a true Magus. It gives us a toggle that we get to pick at any time what we want to buff. A plus 2 to attack bonus, a plus 2 to our spell penetration roll, which is nice, or a plus 2 to our DC save of any spell we cast. So now we went from a 10 plus whatever spell level we're casting, so a 21 to 26, you can add upwards of plus 8 to a plus 9 to that. So a level 6 spell could be if we're lucky and it falls under the right category of evocation and fire or evocation and cold, whichever one I pick, it would be a 26 and 8 would be a 34 DC. If it was a level 5 spell that I was buffing up in casting as a level 6 spell, I could get it up to a, what was that, plus 9? 26, 35 DC. Again, that's not amazing compared to what some sorcerers can do out there, but it's pretty damn good. And I'm sure there's other ways for us to buff the DCs with gear in this game. So we have a pretty good chance at landing some of these spells. I think we have a really good shot at making a damage dealing type. Now, why am I going race spells so much? Remember, I'm an Eldritch Scion. I should be focusing melee attacks through my weapon, shouldn't I? Well, I don't want to get into melee combat unless I have to, man. I don't want to die. And if I'm soloing, that is a really possible choice. So, what do? We whittle them down from distance with AoE moves, debuff moves, race spells that hit like a brick shit house, and then let them get into melee range. Well, I'm still going to want to hit them with some of those better beam spells, right? Even at melee range. The problem is I'm not an Eldritch Archer. I can't focus it through my bow, and I have attacks of opportunity if they're in melee range with me, right? Wrong. Let me show you why. At level 11 right here, you're going to get Weapon Specialization Ray and Point Blank Master Ray as your 2 feat picks. To do that, you're going to have to get a bunch of other shit. But these 2 here, this is as soon as you can open this up. So once we get to a level 11, I can cast Ray Beam spells in your face at point blank range, and you don't get attacks of opportunity on me. That's amazing. Now I have milestones here for the feats that we're going to pick. Notice some feats that we get, of course, for free as well are listed here, and that's part of the reason for these milestones. Notice at level 1 we get our Weapon Finesse, we already told you that. We get for free Spell Combat, that's some concentration bonus checks, right, that we're going to get. Also we get that ability to Spell Combat toggle, where we can cast a spell and attack with our melee weapon, because we're Eldritch Scion, in the same combat round. We take a penalty to that hit, -2, but we do have 2 attacks a round now instead of just 1, or a buff and an attack in a round, and that's still helpful. So Spell Combat's still useful at level 1 as far as I'm concerned. It's not great, we're going to pass it up before too long, but it's definitely there and something we will use throughout our leveling process. We get the ability to buff our weapon at level 1 to a +1 weapon, no matter what weapon we're talking about, whether it's our bare hands, a bow, or our kukri, or our rapier, or whatever other weapon we're using. But it's going to be weapon finessable more likely than not if it's melee, and that +1 bonus is going to help early on. Doesn't last long, 1 minute per click, but we got ways of making that last longer, as you'll see later. We have got a choice of either a familiar or an arcane bond, which we get to recast any one spell that we've already cast once in a day. I went with arcane bond. It does work. I don't know that it's going to be great, but the familiars just weren't doing it for me. Maybe I'm making a big mistake. Maybe you guys can tell me why down below. But the only familiar that stood out to me as being something I thought of as interesting is the one that either gives me natural armor class +1, I think that's the lizard, or the extra hit points, that's the chicken, seems silly, or the hare, which give us improved initiative. Now that one I can believe. They all give, of course, +2 perception, and since we're going solo for as much as possible, and it means only, and this can't stress this enough, 1 perception check in an area per level, of course. So if I miss it once, I could level up, run back through the area, and maybe I'll get lucky the second time. You get the idea. But that +2 perception bonus, by having a familiar and having that familiar out, that could help us more than I think. So maybe I'm missing the point. But we're also at level 1. We have to pick a bloodline, and again, we already mentioned our arcane bloodline. And again, +1 to those spells for DC if we metamagic it. Again, not counting heighten. If it's heightened, it's already a +1, so it doesn't help. You don't get +2 is what I'm telling you. So you might as well pick something other than heighten and use it. And I would pick at least 1 metamagic in this build. I have a chance to pick 2. I don't know that I will, but at least I'll get either, in my choice, the 3 would be reach, extend, or empower would be one of the 3 that I would pick. Probably would be extend, if I were to be honest. There's always an effect that we want to make last longer. Extend works. There's always a buff that we want to last longer. Extend works. Reach gets us a lot of utility. Longer range for our attacks. Obviously, our melee touch attacks now become ray spells. Again, pretty damn badass with Point Blank Master. Sure, I can see that being cool. It's not as cool as you think, but it's something. We also get a buff to damage because of that. Thank you, Point Blank Shot. But it's only 1 point of damage. But whatever. I'd still rather cast it through my weapon and hit you with the weapon and hope that I crit. And I have a pretty good chance at critting, so, you know, it's definitely worth trying. But I can see the use. Notice at level 2, we don't get to pick a feat. We get Spell Strike for free. Now we're channeling stuff through our weapon. So thank you, Corrosive Touch. If we were to pick it, we didn't. Shocking Grasp, though, now we're having fun. And then once we get to level 2, we can do stuff like Frigid Touch. Level 3, we're going to get Point Blank Shot, and that's just because we're going to be casting ranged touch attack spells anyway. So might as well get the bonus to damage and a bonus to hit. Snowball, looking at you. We get to pick from a variety of Magus feats, and in this case we get to pick either Wand Mastery, Wand Wielder, or Arcane Accuracy. And the more I look at those 3, all 3 are really good. I went with Wand Mastery. That may be a mistake early on. I'm going to probably get the other wand one as well, and I may even get Arcane Accuracy. As you can see over here, we're coming back to it later on. But Wand Mastery early on may be useful. This one basically allows us to increase the DC check of a wand cast spell. Normally they're set at whatever the DC, sorry, how do I say this? The bonus, you would, let's say I'm a charisma-based character, which I am. To cast a fireball spell, you have to have a 13 charisma, because it's a level 3 spell. That's a +1 bonus to your DC, because that's what a 13 charisma would give you, +1. So the DC is not going to be very high for a fireball spell cast from a wand. Wand Mastery increases it to whatever our, what is that, half our level? Half our caster level? Or, that can't be right. It's got to be like equal to our actual charisma bonus. And again, that's something we're going to pump up. So better chance to land the wand spells is what we're basically saying here. This is the short version. Combat casting adept. Now we're talking about some extra concentration for while we're casting spells and all that fun stuff. That's all helpful. But again, we're not really coming into our own. Not even at level 4. We got no feat picks at all. Spells are going to be there, sure, but by and large, 1 through 4 is going to be a slugfest. We'll have a team more likely than not all the way through this. 5, maybe level 6 is when we'll start dipping out our toe to see if we can start soloing with this build. Spell focus. You're going to pick it here, and again we have choices. I would suggest evocation, but again you see that I have transmutation or conjuration or viable. Hell, if you want to go necro lord, do your thing, man. I'm not going to stop you. But for me, these are the ones based on the spells I'm picking that make the most sense. We're probably going evocation. At level 5, we also get another feat. We're going to grab precise shot. Remember, we're going to have a bow or a crossbow anyway. Might as well use it. It's a good effect. And I really don't want to have to worry about melee attacks. Yes, attacks of opportunity are going to suck if he's in my grill, but at the very least I have a good shot at hitting him now thanks to my precise shot. And that also works with your ray spells. So, don't want to have a -4 penalty, right? And once we get to here, we don't have to worry about attacks of opportunity on our person. So that's cool too. Arcane weapon +2 now is in effect instead of +1, so that's a better weapon swing. And we get to enchant the weapon potentially for either fire damage, cold damage, electrical damage, or making it keen. That's nice for critting, and thank you again for spell strike. That's okay. This keeps me from having to find keen weapons and from having to pick that feat, the improved critical range one. So freebies, gotta love it. Level 6, we don't get to pick a feat, but we do get to pick one from the Magus class. And while there's multiple choices, again, back to our wand choices or arcane accuracy choices, Enduring Blade shows up here. And if you don't pick Enduring Blade at this point, I don't know why the hell you're playing Magus. Enduring Blade is amazing. This literally doubles the cost of you activating the buff, the +2 weapon or the +1 weapon and plus fire damage, whatever. But it increases the duration from 1 minute to 1 minute per caster level. So already at level 6, I can click it and make it last for 6 minutes. That's a pretty damn big fight. So that's 2, 3, 4 rooms, depending on how fast I move. That's pretty cool. And it just gets better from there. Level 7, we're going to get greater spell focus of whatever you picked up here. That's our school of choice. That's one we're running with. Notice how we also get medium armor now, baby. Do we have to use it? No, but if you find that cool piece of gear, why not put on that breastplate of awesome sauceness? Level 8, a dead zone. Sadly, we get nothing but spells in this level. Level 9, though, is good news again. We get now Weapon Focus Ray, and we have to get it by this point because now he has set us up for these 2 spells. So all these ones are pretty much necessary. Well, not the spell focus ones, but it's good picks. There's no reason not to get them. Weapon Focus Ray, weapon +3 now. And we get the ability to buff our weapon to making it a speed weapon. And remember, this doesn't have to be a melee weapon we're buffing. We can buff a bow. We can buff a sling. We can buff our fists. So if we want to be able to do that, we can totally do that. There's no reason not to. And again, it's free. Combat casting again, adept is added again. So another buff to your concentration checks. It's just getting better from here. Ghost Blade is a silly easy pick at this level. If you don't pick this, just like Enduring Blade, I don't know what the hell you're doing. Are there good choices? They're all good choices, but this gives you 2 really good ones. The ability to affect incorporeal targets using the Ghost Touch effect on your weapon. And of course my favorite, the Brilliant Energy buff, which allows you to basically ignore their armor, I think, if I'm not mistaken. So basically everything becomes a goddamn touch attack. That's huge. And we can do that for up to like 9 minutes per click of that effect. Psh, badass. Level 10. Again, no feat that we get to pick. Spells, of course, show up. We get fighter training for free. It's completely fucking useless at this level, pardon my language, but that's just because we're going straight 1 through 20 as an Eldritch Scion. This helps us get these. So it's not that it's useless, it's just at this level it didn't do shit. It's just, this could have been delayed to level 11 for all I gave a damn, because again, nothing else showed up here because we didn't get a feat here. If we had staggered, if we picked a different class, like a fighter level 1 and then 19 levels of Eldritch Scion, then it would have made more sense. But there's no point. So, like I said, it's there. We will need it, but we won't need it this level. We really need it for this level. Weapon specialization, though, now at level 11 for Ray and point blank master for Ray. Now, weapon specialization for Ray will do you not one goddamn bit of good. It is broken currently. Sadly, this is supposed to give you a +2 damage, not per die, just a +2 damage to any weapon attack. In this case, our Ray spells. It does not work. But you have to have it to unlock point blank master Ray. And this was the whole point of this build. Blasting a single target jackass with a Ray touch attack at point blank range where I don't provoke attacks of opportunity and I have my best spells seem to be Ray spells for single target damage anyway. Looking at you, Disintegrate, Scorching Ray, and Hellfire Ray, and any others that I could think of, right in their face. And they don't get to swing at me extra because of these 2 feats now. So that's the reason for this. Level 12, again, we have a chance to pick a variety of things. We can get that extra wand spell or effect. That's the wand wielder, I believe it's what it's called. Remember, we already grabbed wand mastery. Or you could get devoted blade. This allows you to basically affect the alternate alignments. So again, if you're lawful good, now you can affect chaotic or evil and get a bonus to your attack because of that. It's there, it's cool, I guess. I'm not a big fan. I like arcane accuracy, on the other hand. This one's pretty badass. And there's 2 others that are extremely similar. So let's actually talk about these 3, because this is important. So there's arcane accuracy. And what this does is for 1 combat round, all the attacks in your combat round, you get a buff to the attack bonus based on your primary stat, in this case, charisma. By the end of this game, I should be able to get a charisma of 30. That's a +10 bonus. So now imagine you get a +10 to every swing in 1 round, guaranteed. It's a big bump, right? It's a lot of armor penetrated, a lot of dexterity ignored from the bad guy you're swinging on. That's pretty cool. There's 2 other feats like this that are helpful, and let's look at those. So there's Dimension Strike and Prescient Attack. Now let's look at each of those separately. Prescient Attack for 1 arcane pool point, or in our case an eldritch pool point, whatever, same thing. But for 1 point, for 1 round, I believe, you get the ability to ignore your target's dexterity bonus. That's awesome. It's like they're flat-footed, even if they're not. But arcane accuracy is guaranteed bonus to you, and it doesn't matter how much dexterity the bad guy had, right? And to make it worth your while, let me point out this. Arcane accuracy is 1 point as well, lasts for the same amount of time. I could get it to a +10 to my hit. If I'm talking about Prescient Attack, instead of it being a plus to my hit, it's a minus to their armor class, which is the same thing, really. But it's dependent on them, not me. What I mean is, it's dependent on their dexterity, not dependent on me, like my charisma bonus, which is what arcane accuracy is focusing on. If I'm working on that, their dexterity to make it worth my while to go Prescient Attack instead of arcane accuracy, the Prescient Attack would have to be, they would have to have a dexterity of 30 at least to be worthwhile, and using all that +10 bonus from their dexterity in their armor class for it to be worth my while to go Prescient Attack. Or if we're talking about being better than arcane accuracy, then they would have to have a 32 dex or higher, and again using all that dex bonus for their armor class for Prescient Attack. Now maybe there's bad guys in this game that have a 40 freaking dex. I don't know. That would be awesome. Take that 40, that's a +15 to their armor class for dodge armor class thanks to their dex. That's now gone because I did Prescient Attack. Is that better than a +10 for arcane accuracy? Sure, 15 is better than 10. But how often are you going to come across those guys? Yeah, it'd be nice to have all of them, but you have to pick something. Now let's look at the other one, the other counterpart, which is the Dimension Strike one. Dimensional Strike 1 means you basically, for 1 round, and for a cost of 2, count them 2 arcane pool points. For 1 round, your 1 in combat round, you turn all your attacks into touch attacks, which means basically you're ignoring their armor class. That sounds awesome. And again, could beat arcane accuracy. Let's find out. They would have to have something along the lines of 10 extra armor or more for it to be worth your while. That's actually not that hard to get. That 10 armor can be, plate armor is 9, and then a teeny tiny buckler shield puts you at 10. So it's not hard to see how Dimensional Strike could be better. However, again, it's dependent on what they're wearing, not how high my charisma is. That's what arcane accuracy works off of. So I'd rather have the guaranteed plus 10 versus a possible negative 10 to their armor class or greater. If I'm seeing different as I get to this level and I'm seeing a lot of heavily armored guys, maybe I'll change up. But again, arcane actually only cost me 1 point for that 1 round of effect versus 2 points for the Dimensional Strike, and again for the same 1 round of effect. So maybe arcane actually really is the better of these 3, but I'll leave it to you to decide. 13. Nothing really to write home about except for the fact that we have Piranha Strike. If we really feel like our weapon's doing under damaged at this point, we're probably not doing it right, but Piranha Strike is cool. There's nothing wrong with that. And again, we're getting some pretty good base attack bonus, so now we can take a penalty to it and get some extra damage on top of that. So I'm cool with Piranha Strike, but at level 10 and later we have the ability to pick wings. Remember, we are an Aasimar build, so wings gives us, I want to say, a +3 to our melee armor class. I want to call it dodge, so it's stacks, which is freaking sweet if it works. But it gives us one other thing: the ability to ignore all that difficult terrain that we just slapped on the battlefield with our ice storm, our volcanic storm, our not slow spell, I want to say web would probably fit in this category. Obsidian flow would fall in this category. Tar pool would fall in this category. And we just skitter right across it. And all the while the bad guys hate our guts. How badass is this? Level 14. Let's go on some more. Another milestone moment. Proof spell combat. Again, getting that concentration check up, baby. Gotta love not being interrupted. Arcane weapon +4 now. That's pretty sweet. And remember, that stacks with the buff of the weapon beforehand. So if the weapon's already enchanted, we can just add to it. I'm sure there's a cap. I want to say it caps out at +5. Now, that's not just our +5, which you're seeing right down here. I want to say the whole weapon probably can't be buffed more than a +5. I could be mistaken. That could be sweet news for us. Having a +5 weapon, get another +5 slapped on it. We're just all kinds of badass. I kind of doubt it, but we'll see. But arcane weapon +4 means any weapon I pick up, we're still swinging pretty sweet and heavy. Notice how we also get to the heavy armor. And again, this is armor we can wear now. We have the feet to wear it, and we have the ability to cast spells while in it, and it doesn't impede us. It impedes our movement. It lowers our skill checks for those physical ones because of the armor, sure. But I'd rather have more armor than less, if you get my drift. Level 15. School power. This is another reason I love this arcane bloodline. We get a school power, which is basically a +2 to whenever school of, like basically getting spell focus and greater spell focus for free. But we already have spell focus and greater spell focus, brother mutant. Yeah, that's right. And we can add it to evocation again to get another +2 to our DCs, boys and girls. That's pretty badass. Now, sure, I could have gone transmutation on the school power and be a jack of all trades as far as evocation and transmutation and not a master of one, but I'd rather it to hit, right? So maybe I'll change my mind and I'll split them between two schools. Hell, I could even do spell focus evocation, spell focus conjuration, and then do school power transmutation. So I have a +1, and a +2 to those 3 schools. I don't know yet, but we'll see. This is where I suggest you pick up a Metamagic by this point. You have enough spells now that it's probably good to diversify. Yes, you're going to get a Metamagic Rod or 4. Yes, you're going to get extend ones. You're going to get empower ones. You're going to get maximize ones. But wouldn't you like to be able to upgrade your spell list just a little bit? Remember, we have limited picks. And while it's nice to have a shield spell, it's nice to have several shield spells. One at level 1, or several at level 1, several at level 2. Works for me. That's what Metamagic is for. Combat Casting Adept, again, we get another buff to our concentration checks, so we're getting more meaty every day. And again, for a Magus Feat pick, if you don't pick Bane Blade at level 15, I don't know what the hell you're doing. This thing is amazeballs. A +2 to your swing with that weapon. A +2d6 of force damage to your hits with that weapon. Yes, it decreases your +4 or +5 weapon bonus that you normally would equip by 1, but you get +2 back. So if a +4 becomes a +3 and a +2, it becomes a +5. So it's still better. You'd be insane not to pick Bane Blade, in my opinion. Level 16. We don't get any feats, sadly, here. It's a dead zone. However, we do get Counter Strike. And what that one does is it allows you to basically do an attack of opportunity of any defensive spell casting being done within melee range. So that's, from what I understand, not just wizards or sorcerers. That's a bard that's casting a defensive spell. That's a cleric or druid that's casting a defensive spell. So you run up in their business, or God forbid you dimension door teleport right to their face and bring the pain to them. They start buffing up. Guess what? Attack of opportunity, bitch. Got it. Level 17. Elemental Focus, Fire or Cold. Again, we talked about this before. Which do you pick? These are the two obvious choices. Acid would be a waste. Electric is not that great either for the spells that I have picked, of course. Are there other ones that we could have gone with? Sure. But Fire or Cold are pretty good staples. Fire is probably your obvious one. There's more fire spells than there are cold spells. But there are more cold spells that I want the effect to land. And that's kind of why I'm leaning for cold on this one. So evocation and then cold. I could change my mind. By this point I might realize that fire is my bread and butter, and it probably will be. So elemental focus fire and spell focus evocation is going to be pretty goddamn sweet too. Greater elemental focus, of course, is also going to be picked up at level 7, so you're double dipping right off the bat. Badass. And now you get an arcane weapon +5 bump. Pretty sweet. Level 18, we don't get a feat, but we do get greater spell combat. That basically, again, is like combat casting adept and improved combat casting and all that fun stuff. Basically, more concentration checks. You're less likely to be interrupted, blah, blah, blah. We pick another arcane feat, and this is going to be our wand, what's that one called? Wand wielder or devoted blade, again, which we didn't pick earlier. Perhaps if for whatever reason you decided not to get arcane accuracy until now's a good time to pick it up. I'd say I could slap in again Cretan attack or the dimension strike, but again, we've already talked about why those aren't that great. I would probably err on the side if I wanted to pick one of those up, though, for whatever reason. I know dimension strike looks appealing, and it is. No, don't get me wrong. The ability to ignore their armor is pimp. But remember, at level 9, you got Ghost Blade. Ghost Blade allows you to give that brilliant energy buff to your weapon. That basically turns your weapon into a melee touch attack weapon. Or if it's a bow, it is a ranged touch attack bow now. So it's ignoring their armor. The only reason I think that doesn't work, the brilliant energy buff that I'm talking about at level 9, is it doesn't work on certain types of monsters. So I want to say undead and constructs and blah, blah, blah. So Dimensional Strike in that particular instance may be better. But we got spells, baby. The weapon ain't working. I can get around that. That doesn't bother me one bit. So here you go. Arcane Accuracy if you haven't picked it by now. Wand Wielder if you haven't picked it by now. Devoted Blade if you have no other choice. I suppose, whatever. But definitely the Wand one or the Arcane Accuracy by this point if you haven't picked them up. Level 19, again, if for whatever reason you didn't pick Wings up at level 13 because you really wanted that Piranha Strike, now's your chance to get it. And I'd say you really kind of want this. I would want Wings over a second Metamagic pick. That's how much I want Wings. If I've picked Wings up like I should have at 13 and I don't feel like I need Piranha Strike, and I've picked up a Metamagic, I could get Piranha Strike here. I didn't put it there. I could get another Metamagic, making my spell book even, or spell picks, I should say. Remember, we don't have a book per se. My spell picks better. Or I could get some extra arcane pool points That's actually Eldritch Pool points. Same difference. We're going to burn through those things just as fast as we burn through spells. But we can always take a knee, get those back, so maybe not that big of a deal. But Metamagic would be good. But wings for sure, if you haven't picked them up by now, I would say this build is made for having wings. Red Bull gives you wings. Just kidding. 20. This is the reason we are literally going all the way to 20. We don't get a feat. We do get Arcane Apotheosis, which means we never fail a concentration check now, which is sweet. So we're always going to flip off our spell unless we die. True Magus is the real reason, though, we're going all the way to 20. True Magus is amazeballs. You get a +2 to your attack bonus as a toggle. If you shut that toggle off and turn on one of the other two toggles, you can have a +2 to your spell penetration. Remember, we didn't even pick spell penetration or greater spell penetration for that matter. So a +2 is nice just to have it. And if we don't want that one, we can get a +2 to the DC of our spells. Every spell that has a DC check. Boom, bitches. True Magus all the way. With that, though, we are done talking about this build. My name is Brother Mutant. You please like, subscribe, comment down below. Tell your friends about this channel if you would. Tell me what I did wrong. Tell me how you would build your Eldritch Scion different. Keep it to the same, though. Do a level 20. Tell me how you would make yours better, or what you think you would change up to make it feel better for your play style. And I'll see you guys soon. Bye now.